Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Adobe Live. My name is Sen Lagos, and today I will be your host. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our new Adobe Live channel on YouTube to stay up to date on the latest streams and participate in the Adobe Live community. Start your day with the Photoshop Creative Challenges hosted by no other than Voodoo Val every weekday at 9 a.m. Pacific. And also tune in and challenge yourself with a new prompt each day. With us today is Cecilia Righini. Hi, Cecilia. Can you tell us more about yourself and the project you're working on?
Hi, everyone. I'm Cecilia. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the founder and creative director of Studio Lutalica. So Studio Lutalica, we design for feminist and queer clients and projects, and we're all a full-on team of women and LGBT people. So today I would like to work on one of our clients, which is Womankind Worldwide, and they are an organization that supports women organizations in Africa and South Asia area. So we'll be working on a strategic report for the next kind of like 10 years. Will be a PDF, so that will be available for download and for print. So it will be nice to kind of like work on these few different formats.
That's awesome. Wow, that's definitely very, very like challenging brief in general, I think. Kind of cool to tackle today.
Yeah, exactly. There's going to be a few different kind of text that we'll need to kind of highlight, work on like hierarchy. We have a very nice color palette that we can play with, so it's going to be exciting.
Awesome. We have also Gareth, Clever, Wade saying hello. Hi, hola Cecilia, Enlightened Swami. Oh, that's a cool name. Saying hello to you too, and they're excited to learn more about your project. That's awesome. So should we jump right in, or do you want to show us some more of your work?
Yeah, I can show you quickly some of the work that we've been doing just to kind of give you a bit of a background. So this is our website, lutalica.studio. So just to jump kind of in the portfolio, and while we do that, I'm going to give you a small, like a kind of cute background for myself. I've been working as a design manager for a few years now. About 2 years ago, I launched a studio. So I have education in design management and in gender studies. So kind of decided to put these two together to provide more support for the LGBT community. But we've been working a lot on web and branding, but my true passion really resides in editorial design. So this is kind of like one of the big projects that I've done a few years back. So a magazine called Vaginomics, which aimed to destigmatize kind of pleasure through art and design. So very feminist, very queer. Have a look on your own time if you'd like. But this is kind of like my main project. Yeah, so today we're gonna work on something. It's not a magazine per se, but it's gonna be a long report. So there's gonna be some similarities in this with the use of illustration and photography. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to kind of dive into that.
Wow, that's so cool. Did you come up with the name also, the Vaginomics? That's such an interesting.
Yeah, not quite. So it was, I took it from a report from 2017. It was a trend forecast report that said that 2018 was going to be the year of vaginomics. So kind of like economics around pleasure, like kind of sex toys and all of this kind of different things. And I thought it was that's a very catchy name, isn't it? So
did it ended up being sort of true? I love reading those predictions, design predictions, because they tend to be fair, more accurate than astrology, that's for sure. Yeah, but yeah, like favorite the best colors or the up and coming technology, and yeah, did that become true, do you think, in your perspective?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think there's a part of me that, of course, like lives in a bit of a bubble within the kind of feminist and queer community, and I think there's always a lot of buzz around these things. But
True.
in general, I think there's been quite a shift in the past few years regarding kind of anything that is female sexuality, and more feminist issues in general, really. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see that grow more and more and kind of support organization in the process of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really admiring your focus and how clear you are on what interests you, both on the concept side of focusing on feminist viewpoints and creating designs around that, but also editorial specific. It's so hard to kind of pick a niche or pick a specific design. Editorial is definitely one of my favorites too.
Yeah, it's definitely not been the kind of most spread in the last few years with like the pandemic and everything.
Yeah.
Everyone requested more digital work rather than kind of printed, and but yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite things. So I'm very happy to be doing this today.
Yeah, there's definitely digital editorial zines and things like that, right?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's probably less profitable, isn't it? So it's more like kind of personal projects rather than we've been asked much less than the usual.
Yeah, sure thing. Hey, if everyone has any particular questions or any thoughts on some of the projects, definitely browse their what was it? Lulattica.studio.
Lutalica. Yeah, Lutalica.studio. It's a hard name.
Yeah, it's a hard name.
It's a hard name.
Much
indeed.
harder. Okay, so definitely check it out and drop the questions on the chat as we go along.
Please. Lovely. So just want to give you also a quick introduction on on Womankind Worldwide, so kind of the organization that we're going to design for today. So they came to us with the aim of designing the strategy report, as I mentioned, and the impact report. So at the beginning, we focused on kind of like how we can make this just a PDF document. We moved away from it in the sense that we're still going to create a digital side of it, so a microsite that will go along the kind of PDF report. But as I was saying, so they kind of focus on supporting different organizations across Africa and South Asia, or supporting kind of women. So yeah, it's very interesting content as well to kind of work with. So as I was mentioning, so they kind of have their own branding. So they came to us with a branding guideline. And just kind of bring that up so we can have a look with what to check what we're working with today. I mostly will gonna show you the visual identity. To kind of, so this is their logo. They have a responsive logo, which is very nice to work with in editorial design because you're not stuck with that one format that doesn't quite fit. They have some rules, of course, that we'll need to respect while we design. A nice color palette, nice kind of shades of purple, secondary highlights color that we can work with. We've got one main font, so they've got Isidora as a font. We also have Montserrat, but as an alternative, so we won't be using that today. But it's always nice to see in kind of branding guidelines when they always give you an alternative for potentially Google when you use that. And kind of like, some guidelines on how to use the fonts. That's going to be quite important. Graphic elements that we can use across the reports, an example of branding use. So we're going to keep this on the side to just make sure that as we design, we kind of we make sure that we're following their guidelines.
Right.
This is quite important. So as kind of like to guide us through my process in general. So the first thing that I would do when I start working with a new client is to kind of do some research, and from just in terms of like who are the competitors who they're working with, what work they produce already, what are the competitors producing. It's hard to call them, it's tricky to call them competitors in this case. It's more like, because the more organizations do this project and the better it is, but it's kind of a common term that we're using anyway in design, right? Yeah, let's open up the mood board, making this a little bit bigger. There we go. So this is kind of what we presented to the client. So no filters here. We always have a kind of initial explanation of what our idea is, what is our understanding of the project, making sure that we have this all right. And then we move on to kind of like the general mood board. So we like to start with like kind of a spread that kind of can bring together the keywords that we picked up from our discovery session with the client. So we're gonna design something that is going to be clear, defined, very strong, progressive. The word feminist came up a lot during their discovery session. People-focused, uncompromising, unique, and decolonized, which is another kind of big theme that we'll go through. It's very important for Womankind to kind of position themselves as kind of trying to decolonizing, so kind of an organization that doesn't just kind of help and come in like the white savior, but actually supports and listens to this various organization, giving them a voice. So this will be a very important part to highlight as well. Here we're trying to kind of like show the clients how we're planning to use the color. So what we saw in their previous work, in the previous impacts reports that they showed us, is that they had quite a hectic, perhaps, use of color. We want to be very defined and bold, and we want the idea of this kind of boldness and progressiveness like coming through for kind of the defined use of color. So we'll see how that can come across. We will go through kind of a more specific use of typography as well. So how can we make sure that the hierarchy of information is well defined? So how can we highlight the important information and make sure that people that are also skimming through the report are going to get an immediate sense of what the report is about. And then the last kind of page is regarding the use of illustration and graphic elements. We'll also have some photos that the client just gave us, so we're going to be using those. But we are also producing a series of illustrations for this client. So they're not ready yet, but we'll need to make sure that we account for them in our report. So yeah, this is for kind of like our mood board process.
Really interesting. Do you find, I have a question of my own. Do you find that pitching, so I noticed, so you had your brand guideline, the emphasis on the word guideline. I often get this question of whether it's like a rule abiding where you can't shift or change anything, or do you have room during a pitch to propose like for example, a temporary font that may translate that concept even more, even further, or do you not push those boundaries in that sense?
Very good question. We do tend to propose kind of alternative solutions if we think it might be best, especially when it comes into terms with accessibility. So if, for example, they use a font that is really like illegible, or a color pairing that doesn't have enough contrast, so that's where we would kind of jump in and say, hey, it might be very useful to kind of switch this color or this font. But with this client specifically, they actually told us that they've redone the branding 2 years ago, and they felt like it was time to kind of try and stretch it a little bit. So we do have a little room for kind of so it was not going to look exactly like this kind of website. Like, we're not trying to replicate exactly this vibe, but we can keep that into consideration and see how we can go even further in terms of accessibility, in terms of legibility, hierarchy of information, etc.
Yeah, maintain some of that personality along the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Yeah. So if there are not any other questions maybe from the chat, I'm happy to kind of like move on to our InDesign file. So I am going to start from the beginning, and I would like to set up a new file. It's now on this other window. So from discussing with the client, like at this stage, we know already what the format is going to be. With reports, there's always kind of the conversation about like, is it going to be landscape? Is it going to be portrait? Can we do anything in a more kind of creative way? In this case, we're just going to go ahead and design kind of a A4 portrait file. So I'm just going to go and select the preset from InDesign. Units in millimeters because I'm in Europe. And I'm going to go ahead and deselect facing pages because I'd like the document to be like one pages after the other. I'm going to add 20 pages. I like to start big. Oh, I created it by mistake with 2 pages, didn't I? Great. Let's go ahead and recreate it again. Right, we said 20. I will leave the margin as it is. I find that quite useful, but I will add 3 millimeters bleed around the edges just to make sure that if we're going to go ahead and print this, any kind of color that goes for width will be picked up, and the slug is not necessary in this case. So now, just to make sure that I did select 20 pages, yes.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Okay, so the first thing that I would kind of do when I jump in my file is to start kind of setting up the parent pages,
Okay.
my swatches, my paragraph styles. So I am just going to go ahead and click on the A parent. For now, I think one will be enough. I don't think I'll need multiple ones, but we'll see along the way in case we feel like we need a few different templates. So let me have a look at the branding guideline. And we're gonna go and find our swatches over here. So it's great that we've got already kind of like this CMYK code as well, so we can just go ahead and copy that in. What I usually do is just kind of select it from here. So I will copy paste my hex code, which is the easiest option here, and just double check once it's been created here that is the correct code. So we've got 8800 2615. Okay, so we're going to just correct that. I like also to untick the name with color value and actually give my own name to the color. It's going to help me as I design. So this is going to be a dark purple. I don't also need all of these extra colors, so I'm just going to delete that for now. And I'm going to do the rest with the other colors as well. I actually checked this before. The other ones are fine. So
D Cruz says everything looks so polished.
Oh, well, let's see once we get into the rest of it if it's still gonna be looking polished.
Yeah, it's almost like, and in design, everything feels really organized in order to kind of get into that flow. I noticed it's not as I guess you can get a little crazy with artboards on Illustrator, just draw anywhere, but the design workflow and InDesign tends to always be really organized for me too. So maybe that's just like the nature of the program.
Yeah, true. I think as I started using InDesign, I felt like it was much more chaotic than it can be. So I really started to find a way to be as much organized as possible, because one thing that I found quite limiting compared to Illustrator is the fact that you don't have a big artboard, so you have to necessarily start getting organized immediately.
Yeah.
Which can be really good, in fact, for instead of with Illustrator, I tend to be very disorganized, that my files are all around the place.
It's like a different personality. Yeah, I think I'm a little bit like that in Photoshop. I still have my layers organized for the sake of my mind, but I like that flow of just not having too much structure, so that I can have wiggle room to play around. But once I'm in spaces like InDesign or things like that, I think I'm ready to tackle something that I already know what it's going to look like. At least that's usually my approach. I feel like you're very, very organized too.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
It's and I think it comes with, like, everyone does a slightly different. I think it's just like you find your groove after a while. That's isn't it?
Yeah.
So, there we go. We've got black already. So I'm just gonna say Womankind black. There we go. So we've got all of our colors here. Just gonna make it much easier as we go along. And then what we're gonna do is to set up a grid as well. So kind of a layout. I'm just gonna go ahead and click on. I'm wondering if I should just do kind of like columns, or if create actual guide as well here. And here I'm thinking about potentially using baselines rather than just kind of like rows. That's why I'm thinking about this. Possibly guides at the moment is a good way to kind of like get started. And if I see that we need to change that later, we can do that. This is going to be kind of like a simple, because it's a portrait kind of A4, to have the text across the whole page might be too harsh for accessibility. So we're going to break this down in 2 columns. I actually would like to preview it and see how it looks like. I like to have quite a good gutter in the middle, so like maybe about 12. So we're going to kind of try and match the margin as well. So that was 12.7. So let's go ahead and just do the same.
Yeah. I had a question. So you said that having text across both, I guess, a spread is hard for accessibility. Can you explain why?
Yeah, so it's just about how the eye actually go from one side to another, and then how quickly it can catch the next line. So usually, especially if this report is going to be seen digitally and not printed, we want to make sure that you've got an average of about 11 words maximum per line. So that will make sure that that's the perfect length for it, to make sure that you kind of still are able to go down to the next line and not lose your lose track of where you are.
Interesting.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. I definitely read books and I'm like, I am reading the same sentence again. What's happening? And it had to do with, like, I blame the designer. Basically, the leading is incorrect, or the tracking was too off.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, we've got our 2 columns here. I actually decided not to create any rows at the moment, because I might create this through the rulers. But let's start with just like kind of easy things. So one thing that I am pretty sure I will need is page numbers. So I'm just going to go ahead and create some text here and add special character, current page number. Now, I know our fonts is Isadora, if I am recalling that correctly. Let's just double check. Especially because they're using, so Isadora sans bold for titles and subtitles, and sans semi-bold for the body copy. which is quite of an interesting choice, using a semi-bold for body copy. But let's go ahead and see.
Maybe it's
perhaps
just
it's
the matter of you're always trying to create a statement. And body copy can be tricky. Actually, we have let's see here. Arokia Raman says, my layers are kind of organized, but my paragraph styles are always all over the place. And it's terrible and I can never get it right. Yeah, I know that struggle. That's definitely takes a little while.
Yeah, and I think you can start super organized, and then as soon as you get into kind of multiple pages with multiple, like, kind of maybe colors, like you change colors throughout the design, and you need to kind of reset all of your paragraph styles or kind of create a new one but white, and all of I know the struggle. All right, so let's just I positioned this in the middle, the page number in the middle, just to make sure that kind of it's going to be not facing pages. So I want to center it for the moment and see how it looks like, in case I can always go back and change it. I'm going to go back to my pages now, and one thing that I have to do that I often forget is to save as immediately. Yes, that's the classic thing that I always forget to do. I created a folder for me to work on today, so I'm just gonna pop everything in there. We're gonna call it the report. Save. There we go. Now I already feel safer. Now I'm gonna leave the cover for later. I want to start with a different page. I feel like the cover is always something that should encompass the whole design. So I want to make sure that that I have something else designed before I jump into that. So we're going to start with our page 2, and we have our copy as well that we can pull up here. So this will be the copy for the report that we'll need to kind of put in the design. So this will be kind of like our page 1. So I broke down this in a way that it's kind of like easier to understand. So like we've got all of our headings that will be kind of different pages, a different section of the report, with kind of like subheadings in it. So we're going to go ahead, and so this will be our title that we'll leave for later. And this is our text for the first page. So what I'm going to do is just copy it all, and just jump in between things incorrectly. There we go. And I'm just going to copy it in there because I like to have just kind of like the whole text here when I work it on the side, and kind of break it down later. So to start with, let's just pop down our title. I don't know how big we're going to make this, so I'm just going to kind of play with it and see how it looks like. I've got a title. Bold. And I am thinking, so for body copy in editorial, anything that will be printed, we want to stay around like 8 and 12 points. We don't want to go too much or too little. For title, I think, especially because we talked about kind of like hierarchy of information and making sure that it's like bold and impactful, I'm going to make this title pretty big. I'm just going to go ahead and see how a few different sizes look like, and maybe even play with let's make it all capital and see how that would look like. So from the text here, we can see that kind of there is no much hierarchy over here, but I like how they separated all of the sentences like this. Feels like all of them are kind of like powerful statements, and we've got a quote. So we can start from like anything before the quote. Seems like in this specific text, this is kind of like an introduction to the report. So I might just go a bit over the kind of body copy and try to make it a bit bigger and see how that looks like. Oh.
It's interesting that you use you copy and paste your body copy on the left-hand side as almost like your notes are on the left-hand side. I often do that too. And then eventually, once I send it out to print, I remember to remove all those items. But it's not meant to be used as that, or it's just there. It's just open area. But I find it interesting that you're doing the same exact thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think it's quite good to have that area, otherwise it could be quite I like playing with that space. Like most of also like our designers, I actually she started working on this project and she showed me the file and there was like kind of photos and images and text everywhere. I was like,
it's like a whole universe.
I don't know what I'm looking at here.
Yeah. I mean, I often do like on the left-hand side, I have all the text. And on the right-hand side, I might have some like inspiration images or mood boards we've agreed on, things like of that nature. But yeah, it's kind of funny how we use it just naturally.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So I'm just going to try and have fun with this part here. So maybe make it like an area that is maybe we can create like
Wade says it seems like a natural thing for me too. Notes everywhere. And Reber says the guides are your friend. Yes, they are. I love using guides. Everything. And Annika has a question. What is Cecilia's favorite tip or most used feature in a design that eases your workflow?
Oh, I think aside from like, that's a hard question. There are so many.
Those paragraph styles, although we hate them, we love to hate them. I think they're really helpful.
That's what I was gonna say. I feel like literally swatches and paragraph styles are my favorite thing. I think perhaps it also comes from I have a bit of background also in web, and having those styles very defined for the developer to kind of then go in and do that work it's very important. So sometimes I'm thinking about like kind of all of this little thing, even if no one has to pick up this work after me, but the idea of like kind of making sure that the file is very tidy, even if like someone else needs to pick it up, right? Like if a designer needs to kind of like design this or if I'm sick or something and there's another someone else that needs to jump in.
It's definitely, you're often thinking about the next designer, especially if you're working in a group setting that might pick it up, or you're organizing it for the future you that might need it, and you don't remember everything, so you just want access to something and thank yourself for having organized everything beforehand. Those little things. I've had things like someone wants to change a bunch of names, and those paragraph styles can be applied like that really easy.
No, exactly. So right now I'm actually not applying anything. So we're talking about how we're applying paragraph stuff, but I'm not. I just want to design my first page before I start actually applying it, because then I find it quite tricky when you start from the beginning, but you're not quite ready and you're constantly changing everything. So I'm just going to give it a second.
Yeah, we're freestyling right now.
We are.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and try to make this big. And of course, this is way too big, but not too far ahead, actually. So maybe.
Crystal says hello. And Rob says, do you use nested styles in your documents?
Oh, that is actually, I haven't got into that quite yet. Because I don't usually have too many. I try to keep it very clean and not to have too many styles, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's a very good feature. Like, I think it's really, really helpful.
The way I understand it, nested, anything nested is definitely another word for grouping items, right? So if you have a lot of paragraph styles, you want to nest them, or styles in general, you want to nest them. They're just, imagine them in Photoshop being in a folder. They're grouped together. That word translates a lot over in Premiere also.
Yeah, that actually on Premiere I've been using that, and it's very, very useful. Yeah, it's funny how we've got this feature across different softwares
applications.
And then sometimes we don't we end up not using it or using it in some rather than others.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. I don't think I use it quite often on InDesign, but maybe there's something there.
Bear with me while I freestyle again this, but hopefully we'll get something decent soon. I'm also very OCD with my files. Like, I like every time with my text boxes, as soon as I resize something, I'm always like double clicking to make sure that it resizes.
Oh yeah, the bounding box.
Yeah, it makes me feel so much better.
It does. Yeah, I would love to be the designer that picks up your work, because I would be like happy that there's no bounding boxes all over the place. Yeah, I've definitely seen that quite a bit.
There we go. Okay, so this is my other favorite kind of feature, is the shortcut W to kind of like see your work very quickly. It's, believe it or not, something that I didn't know throughout like all of my studies, and I was constantly like being like, I don't know how this will come out. I have to export it in PDF and check. And then someone just told me, like, you just need to press W. I was like,
yeah, I think you can hit F also to like full screen at some point after hitting W. And then F. Does it go full? No, I guess not.
Not quite. I wonder if it's like a maybe US UK shortcut. I don't know.
There's always that. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I'm seeing like my content laid out on the page, and of course there's something missing, right? Like this is not quite the interesting layout. So maybe we do want to go ahead here and change this into 2 columns. Another thing that we want to keep in mind, I keep on switching to the wrong thing, is that we're producing a large illustration for this kind of section. So maybe we want to start also thinking about where this illustration could go. So let's think about this. Part of me is thinking that maybe if we do this in 2 columns and we kind of make this also a bit smaller, maybe you can kind of fit the illustration. Oh. Go. Okay, let's try 12. 12 is still pretty big, so let's have a look how much text we actually have. One other thing that I will go ahead and do here is to remove these spaces in between the paragraphs and add some line height and paragraph spacing. So once we are in there, let's have a look. I'm also going to remove the hyphenate because I don't like it when kind of words break down.
Yeah.
Kind of a personal preference, I guess, on this one, but
yeah, I definitely take it off all the time too.
So let's have a look. Maybe.
Annika's asking, what kind of layouts do your clients ask you to create on a day-to-day basis other than reports? Reburb says, my clients have no idea what a layout is. So you get either one client that knows, or then there's those who don't know at all, which is so where we come in.
So true. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of like kind of flyers, leaflets, things like that. So not kind of like long form or kind of a 1 or 2 pages brochures, things like that. We work with a lot of not-for-profit organizations, so they might have a lot of that kind of material. But mostly, I have to say, is kind of reports. So if it's long form, it's most probably going to be an impact report. This is more unusual. It's a kind of strategy report, which is going to have a similar feel, but the content is quite different for the organization.
And then you have sort of like you make the decisions on as far as the layout, design, and where things land, or do they guide you on that?
Well, it depends on the client. Some clients have a very like specific idea of what they want to do. Some clients don't, and just trust you to kind of like create something that will work. But yeah, it really depends. We also work with in a team, so someone might have like kind of different ideas, and we can come together with kind of like a few different ones to kind of show the client, and the client takes it from there in terms of from like more an aesthetic, from an aesthetic perspective.
Yeah, I think layout. Yeah, I was just gonna add to clients not knowing layout design. I think it's a pretty tricky one to pick up even for designers. It's an invisible execution almost. Like the more invisible, the better. And it's like reorganizing your house. You just don't know why, but that sofa looks great there. And you just kind of started developing that style, and kind of gauging how it would work for the information, I think, right? Like the information that you're trying to translate.
Yeah, absolutely. While I'm doing this, just kind of to explain what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So this text that I'm separating right now is, I feel like it's quite powerful and meaningful. So if we go and read it, it says, it is a world where we all live in harmony. It is a future beyond patriarchy. This world is possible. This is a feminist future. Together we have the power to create it. So it's like kind of strong words that I want to highlight. So maybe we're gonna make this text a bit smaller. It's funny because I start super big and now I'm like making everything smaller. And yeah, thinking about the illustration, how that could kind of like fit in this kind of area. Not to forget that here we also have our page number. So we need to make sure that I make that white and visible. I'll bring you forward. There we go. Okay. Also looking at the page feels like this is quite low, so I might just go in my parent page and see if we can make this a bit. Oh, it is higher, so I just moved it by mistake. Right.
I'm reading the text. It's actually all very powerful. It's kind of hard to highlight.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm also looking at kind of, I know it's too soon to start actually doing this work of like kind of pushing down some of the text, but again, I'm quite a city, so I like to spend some time doing this thing. I'm gonna try and make it bold. I think in general, there's something missing in this page as we're looking at it. Like, of course, like there's an image missing here. There's going to be an illustration, so it's going to bring some color. But I'm also thinking how, for example, another way of doing this would be to kind of like have this section in color and this section in white as well. So for the time being, I'm just gonna leave it as that and see how, if designing other pages as well will bring some more inspiration. I am going to start though creating my paragraph styles, because I am quite happy about how this looks. Maybe oh, there is a little typo over here. Maybe we can actually just make this a bit, oops. One thing that I like to check always is on their website as well, to see how they're currently using the font. So to see if the line height is very wide, or if they give you spacing, or if they're not. So this feels quite...
it looks accurate, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, at the moment, I think it feels quite accurate. So we're going to go ahead and create our paragraph styles. I'm going to call it board. Oops. I'm going to call it body. Let's see how many times we change it. I'm gonna create also this one as oh, I keep on doing that. I just want to change the name of it.
Rob and Reverb are having an interesting conversation. Client training takes a good amount of time, as most are unaware of basic principles like CMYK versus RGB, bleeds, margins, lengths, ink limits, etc. Yeah, so it takes a little bit of a learning curve there, I know. Do you find that to be sort of your experience too on that end?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with print, I find it a bit less than with like kind of digital work, because usually I might just get in contact with the person that is gonna, like the printers that are gonna print this, and I'm gonna ask exactly what formats do they need, and do that for them. So having kind of like bypass client communication in that sense, instead of explaining, oh, you'll see that there's a rectangle around it, but it's not for print, it's not going to show up. So I'd rather send them the digital format that is not going to have bleeds, it's not going to have all of the crop marks, and just say, this is what you'll see. And then communicating with kind of the printers directly.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of client management there. It can be a bit frustrating, but that's just one more skill set that you can relate to your next employer. Hey, I managed my clients' expectations. I was able to speak directly to the vendor, which I think is probably the easiest way, because there's something refreshing when you're speaking the same language, so to speak. I definitely have had a similar situation where someone asked me to send to print an RGB document, and I felt like I was doing something really sacrilegious. And and I was like, and as a JPEG too, so like the printer wouldn't have any opportunity to do anything with it. It's just flat. So it's like, okay, sure. And at the time, I definitely had to just go with it. But I'm very, very happy when I get to talk directly to the printers, because it also leaves room for creativity, right? Because they know their format best. They know their limitations, and they know where they can push it a little bit.
No, exactly. And there are so with printers as well, like the client might actually not know what the people at this printing facility might need. Like it changes by every different software that they might have, etc. So it's always better to just like check directly with the person that is actually going to do the work. But I appreciate that often you kind of have to also explain and do that kind of management work of just, this is what I'm doing. By the way, I'm considering this. I am considering print, but So
it's good to have that management of take a little bit of that leadership role. I think Reverb is saying my clients mainly want me to find more places to stick their logos in. I think the logos, like, it's so interesting how it always needs to be everywhere. But currently, I think your layout doesn't have the logo and it still speaks to their personality.
Yeah, I think I've been wondering about potentially adding the logo in every page, little kind of in the footer of the page, if we can call it that way. But I think, you know, it might be a bit too much. Like, these people, it's about the audience, right? We want to kind of make sure that the people that you're designing for, you know, are going to find it, they're going to find it unnecessary. These people are, the audience of this report is actually people that already follow Womankind, that are interested in their work. They probably received this in a PDF, or like, there's no need to add that extra layer of like, it's us everywhere.
Yeah.
But it depends. If you send it out like more of a kind of a press coverage item that might finish in different places, then that you might want to kind of add a bit more of the branding in.
Yeah, there's definitely graceful ways. I think even the one that you just proposed, it's even if it was included, it's a easy sort of subtle way of involving the logo without it being it's sort of taking away that attention to the main message. Yeah, it's not everyone can pull that off except maybe Nike. Right? It's like everything.
Yep. Yep. All right, I'm gonna try something different in this page and see how that can fit in. And I might need a different style for this font.
When you received some photographs from this brand already, right?
Yeah.
From Womankind. Do you find yourself utilizing, when you don't have assets of that nature, do you find yourself utilizing stock or hiring photographers for a specific concept, or anything of that nature?
Yeah, it really depends on the project. There might be some clients that will provide the kind of assets at some point. So you start by kind of like same as you would do with lorem ipsum text, so kind of like adding some placeholders in. But then yeah, we would use kind of like different stock photography depending also on the budget of the client. Sometimes we end up using some free resources as well, and sometimes if they have the budget, also kind of do the work, the photo shoots as well. But yeah, it's unfortunate that we are tied to budget sometimes, because there's so much that we could do if we had a little bit extra, of course. But we have to kind of like, when we're working with clients, we always have to consider that part of things as well.
Yeah, that's definitely almost like it's a challenge in itself to whether you get to work with big budgets or small budgets. And I think I pride myself in being able to work in small budgets. It kind of gives a few challenges that can turn creative.
Yeah. We're gonna add also in here like kind of another we're gonna add some photos in this page, so because we have very little content. So what I'm gonna do is, just out of curiosity, is to try and pick a different color as a background. So maybe the dark purple. Oops. Push it to the back, and I am going to lock it as well so I don't touch it. And we're going to turn all of this into white. You might want to change the color here as well. let's change this with, let's just start this in. No, I have to change this in Illustrator. So there you go. I said that I was not going to use it. And instead, we're going to open up Illustrator for a second.
We love Illustrator.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm going to speak on everyone's behalf. We love Illustrator.
I mean, I rarely work on InDesign without opening Illustrator. It's just something that just happens.
Yeah, there's always a almost like a match. Either you work with Illustrator and Photoshop, or sometimes it's like 3 applications. You ever find yourself using 3 when you use InDesign? Maybe Photoshop would be that third. Yeah.
I always have them. They're always on my dock anyway. So kind of when I open one, it always ends up. This time I don't have to do any work on the photos because it's already been done. But otherwise, yeah, that's.
Freeburb says, "Go purple or go home."
Go purple or go home. Yes, I agree. It's quite funny because like when this designer that works with us started working on this project, she told me at the beginning when she started working with us, like, I don't like purple, I really don't like purple. And somewhat she always ended up working with purple branding projects.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just have to do what you gotta do.
And sometimes it's the color of the year.
And since it's the color of the year. Oh, nope. There we go. Now it really gives a completely different character to it. So I quite like this. I think I will just need to kind of swift change things around. We might need this to be a full on this side. And then what I'm going to do now is try and select a photo that might work for this page. So I like to just like start with the title. So courage in a new cool word is actually, world is quite a strong one. I'm just going to go and check our images here. Oh, there we go. It's a gallery, so it's easier to see. So in the branding guideline, they kind of specify how they want women to be depicted in a kind of positive way. So not kind of like showing this sad women that need help, but kind of more empowered women, which is very important. So I like the idea, again, like going back to courage in an unequal world. How can we show that kind of hope through the photo? And this is one of my favorite parts of also kind of like editorial design, just like having to match all of these assets and make sure that really all of the elements that you're using are not random, but they're serving a purpose. And in this case, it's a purpose to convey a very, very strong message.
Yeah, definitely some images, and images are powerful, and definitely matching them with the body of text that can like really translate even more of that information is a task in itself. Yeah, there are some very powerful images here as well, so I'm sure it's not going to be hard to find. This is beautiful. I think this can be. I'm going to save this one. Actually, I'm just going to drag it in immediately so I don't forget. And I think going back to a previous question, this is another tip that I really like about InDesign. Knowing if your photo is big enough. Just like to check if your photo is big enough instead of actually like doing this work of like placing it. I always like to just kind of click and check how big it is. Like that's the maximum. Yes.
So I'm like, okay, this is big enough. Let's go back and just kind of dragging this down. But yeah, just kind of like quick. This is also very beautiful. I think like kind of that sense of solidarity, community. These are all very beautiful.
They are. And everyone's so happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I think, you know, again, it falls really well under kind of their branding and their brand in general. So not kind of just the aesthetic of it, but like the idea, the kind of ideas of it's a very powerful image as well.
Yeah, of what could be. Right. Sometimes we paint that picture of the future.
Yeah. So yeah, I wonder if which one, and this is like the case in which like I would actually maybe test with both, send it to the client and see if they have any preference, because especially because these are their own photos, I want to make sure that they're happy with the use of it. So one thing not to forget again is our page number. So I'm gonna go in there and select it and change the color, bring it up. So perhaps it's also time to start wondering if that's a good position for it, because it feels quite high if we start adding some more text. So I'll go in my parent page and maybe place this below the margin.
I really like this purple one.
I think it works very well with just like kind of their images in general, that it's which are very powerful. So part of me is wonder about like kind of text over image effect, but no, I already changed my mind. It's good to try.
Yeah, sometimes the images, one of the tasks that I often get or think about while I'm photographing, I think about leaving some white space or breathing room for any text that can accompany it, so that you do have some room to put that text if you needed to, or some statement or call out. This one doesn't seem to have that much room for the size of the text, but it's kind of cool to look out for that.
No, absolutely. Yeah, this is a tricky one. So we're going to just try and make it work. And if it doesn't, and we're quite lucky also because we've got the full text, the final copy, which often doesn't come until last minute. So you have to spend a lot of time at the end trying to kind of fix it. But I think one thing that I haven't done yet, but just kind of want to acknowledge, is kind of set a margin for when this kind of text comes in, especially if people are going to read this PDF and just scroll through the pages. I think it's going to be quite disturbing if the text always starts at a different level. So we'll just want to make sure that we place a guide for us to make sure that we always place the text in the same place. So now, for example, I'm starting to wonder, is my text for my title too big for the type of text that we'll have? Do we need more pages for each of the sections, or for each kind of like, call a section, or is this kind of enough? Looking also at this part, and this is too big. It was working for the other quote, but not for this quote. So just gonna forgot one piece. I really want to try and give more space to the text above and have a bit more white space, because it feels quite crowded. But again, this is kind of like another possible layout. So I just want to go ahead and play with other pages as well, and we can go back to it later and see how how it feels after we kind of put down some ideas. I like try not to set on something too soon. I can do that actually quite easily. Can go on a go very deep into a page and then spend hours and hours and hours, and then I have to change it anyway. So
yeah, it's good to sort of kind of leave it alone and then revisit it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so now this is going to be a long one, as you can see. There's quite some text compared to the other pages. And there seems to be a large illustration and 2 small illustrations. So what I'm thinking is that perhaps this could be its own page with a large illustration, and the rest of kind of like the smaller text can go in a second page. So I'm still gonna copy everything in here. There's something very soothing about just copying the text and apply paragraph styles. I quite like that.
Yes. It's like automatic. Also, it's that instant gratification. You get that style right away. Exactly how you designed it.
I worked hard for it before, and now it's just in autopilot.
Yeah.
So just making sure that I've got the text standing in the right place. Another thing that I prepared beforehand was kind of a little, we can call it like kind of scheme to kind of little graph to show what colors I can use to make sure that that is accessible. So this is a good moment now that I'm doing a new page, see like kind of what kind of backgrounds I could be using, if I'm using patterns, if I'm using. So I'm just going to bring it up to just show you quickly how I usually do that. I'm going to make it as a list again.
We have a question from Rob. Do you prefer setting up your document as a single page document over spreads, and why?
Yeah, it really depends on the document. So some of them require a spread, some of them doesn't. So I would just make sure that I have a good idea before I set up my document, because it's quite tricky when you start designing for a spread. It's very different than designing for a different page, for a single page. So yeah, it's like considerations that I would make before, even with the client. Perhaps it doesn't have to be just like kind of my own single choice, but understanding what is the deliverable, what is the format kind of your work, what is going to be kind of the audience, and all of this conversation kind of fit into the final format, the decision on the format of the design.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, so there we go. So I've done a quick check using kind of one of a million AA kind of color contrast checkers online. Checked all of the colors to make sure that which combinations are safe to use and which ones are okay only for kind of large text and graphics, and the ones that absolutely won't be good. This is usually for web more specifically, but I do like to use it here as well, because this might be read online, or on a screen. So we want to make sure that the color contrast is enough. So here we can see how kind of we're quite limited with body copy, but there is some play around kind of like our titles and the graphics. So I'm just thinking about kind of giving it a different background again, but I don't want to do for the whole page, because it seemed like the next possible option is just the purple, which might be kind of a repetition of what we had before, or the yellow on black, which screams a bit maybe too energetic and maybe a little aggressive. So we're going to stay away from that one.
Yeah. That yellow is like caution.
Yeah.
caution
Yeah,
yellow.
exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it can be used specifically in certain elements when we really want to attract attention, but for a full page might be a bit too much.
Right.
So let's just go ahead and add some. Again, here, so we're going to have this text only and a large illustration. So I'm just going to place the kind of area for a large illustration, maybe just a square, thinking about kind of the formats that we'll have. It looks very big. Whatever the illustration is going to be, this looks very, very big. So I'm going to just make it a bit smaller, and this text will perhaps be a bit bigger. This is still too wide, so we can also go ahead and kind of count the words, but I feel like it's going to be a bit too much. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we're just at the limit in terms of like what's accessible. So I think we need to break it down into 2 columns again, unless we want to make the text bigger. It's quite tricky when you kind of like want to do the 2 different columns because of like how the content is laid out. Wonder if we add.
Yeah, sometimes it's a little wonky depending on how much information is left. Yeah. Yeah, I think that looks good there.
Yeah, I mean, especially if the illustration will kind of have a position more like to the right, maybe. One other thing that I'm considering is there too much bold on this page in terms of text? So I might just go ahead and select the semi-bold, and we'll need to create a different style. There we go. Now we're starting with the fun. Just for the sake of my of me remembering, I'm just gonna call it big body. There we go. And yeah, I think I want to give this illustration some. I will want to give this illustration some love. What I might do is just place a photo in there just for the time being to see how colors are looking in there. It won't be the same at all, but just to kind of, I'm purposefully not changing this so that I can kind of resize my photo in there. Well, obviously this is not cut right, but won't be this one. Maybe we want to kind of switch things and do our color at the top this time. Oh, we like the yellow. There you go. So I feel like red is going to be, yeah, way too much for this, unless the text is white. So I still feel it's quite aggressive for a title. Like maybe it could be like an element, but a specific element, rather than the whole thing. So
yeah.
maybe.
Was there guidelines on how much percentage each color receives in the branding?
So not percentage per se, but if we have a look at this, we do have primary colors and secondary colors. So perhaps with background, we do want to stick with this tones and use yellow and the red for kind of yeah, specific elements, as we did for example here. So as a kind of like our quote. wondering, like, we can definitely play a little bit, like, it's nice to go back to the previous page, because now I already have ideas of how to make this a bit more engaging. So how can, example, we can change the color of the quote as well. But more on that later. So another option would be to kind of like maybe just kind of make this, oopsie, no.
Yeah, I think you can hit like Shift Command Z and it fills in the frame. That looks nice. Yeah, so bleeding.
Yeah, so my only concern with this is, well, right now we are designing for an illustration to be placed in there, which might be self-contained rather than going full bleed. So another option is to kind of like keep on giving the margin to this. I'm just going to remove my frame for a second. There we go. So that could be another option. I still don't like how this is breaking down. So I'm thinking how if this is going to fit within. You do have a dog. You mentioned it before.
You heard him. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very sweet. Yeah, how, for example, let's lock this. Or maybe let's leave it there for a second. Just thinking about how, for example, we could have another small illustration here at the top and an image at the bottom. So that could be kind of another option. I'm gonna kind of like crop the frame here and see if we can make this. Yeah, I quite like this idea. So I'm just gonna go ahead and add a circle in here, just because gives me more clarity on the fact that it's going to be an illustration rather than a photo. There we go. Yeah, there's going to be some adjusting to do, of course, as soon as we do get the illustration, the final illustration. But this can be a good layout.
Yeah.
I just want to be mindful of this section as well, because it might look a bit off with like the margins with the page number. I feel like I want to make sure that at least this spacing is the same as this. So in a very cheeky way, I'm just designing my kind of square over here, which is gonna help me position this in the right spot. And I'm gonna go ahead and do the same at the bottom. It might not be, it might still need some adjusting after, like, depending on like how, you know, you can be as mathematical as possible and as logical as possible, but sometimes the eye is seeing something different, right? So
yeah, sometimes we like asymmetrical more than symmetrical.
So I feel like maybe it's more about the space between the page number.
And sometimes leaving that sort of footer fairly thick is nice. It sort of has that elegance. Have you ever seen like a glass and you know that, or a bottle of wine and it's thick, and something about that makes us feel like it has a foundation.
Yeah, exactly. It depends on like kind of, oh, this changed everything. That yellow was bugging me a bit. Yeah, it really, I guess it really depends on like what kind of vibe we want to do, what we want people to focus on. And in this case, of course, is more kind of like the text, and we want to make sure that people understand this. And that's why I'm not too happy at the moment with this layout, because I think it doesn't draw attention to the right places. But again, I'm curious to kind of like, oh, this could be interesting. Just want to double check if this is possible.
We're having a shortcut chat right now. Command Option Shift click and drag is Rob's favorite. Command Option C for Annika. And Penny just got here. Penny says we'll have to rewatch. Yeah, you are welcome to replay any one of these videos at your leisure. I love listening to them myself while I'm working on projects.
Yeah, you always catch some tips in the meantime that it's very useful, especially like feels like somewhat like a podcast if you're just listening to people, and then if you just catch a tip, right, it doesn't have to listen to the whole thing or to watch the whole video carefully.
Yeah, for sure. And for those of you who are just joining us, Cecilia is creating a strategy report based on Womankind's Worldwide brand guidelines. And so far, we've created some two really neat layouts defining in InDesign. Nice. Reverb says Control J is mine. Control J, what does that do?
What does that do? Yeah, I don't know that one.
Oh, Control Z most use, of course, all of us. I like that you said control. Yeah.
I think I at some point in my life, like in my actual like daily life, I remember I was just doing my bed and I was looking for something like I don't know if I lost my phone like in there or something. So I chucked all away, like trying to find my phone. And then in my mind, I literally thought Command Z.
Oh my gosh.
I just went thinking, oh, I want to undo this because it wasn't there. And I thought Command Z and I was like, oh my God, like really? Wow. Am I
if like, only
already at that stage?
Yeah, it's happened to me too. It's definitely a phenomenon of just, yeah.
If only you can undo it.
Or when things fall, like, your laundry falls. It's like, no, can I undo this? Can I just go back to its previous state? Thanks.
No liking. Okay, maybe. Oh, I didn't set this right earlier. Let's just copy this and pop it in there again. Oh, no, that's the incorrect one. Come on, Z, come on, Z. Yep, you are. Sorry, there you go.
Replace what about Control S? Says Penny.
Control S.
Yeah, the save to save.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, we did kind of.
Oh, is that one? Yeah, that is. Speaking of, let's just do it just in case.
Yeah,
because that. There we go. I want to change the color of the text in this one. Oh, see, what have I done?
I mean, InDesign is pretty good at saving some of the previous information in case it just crashes. I remember when it wasn't that way, and it was definitely like, oh no, I gotta redo this.
Yeah, I think I remember the exact moment when
it changed.
And I realized it did change. And yeah, I think that was pure happiness. Like, I think this is what pure happiness was,
Yeah. Now I just want them to not default hyphenate. So
that is a very good one. I really like that one. I am gonna back you up on it.
The little things.
Yep. So again, I am playing here with a new kind of layout. I'm already kind of pushing things down. I'm gonna actually just, oopsie.
Do you remember the first editorial zine or editorial work project that you had to do?
Oh, I think there's been a lot in school. So that was
School,
kind of
yeah.
like, in university, which, it's quite interesting because I actually studied design management and not anything that had to do with
Graphic design.
graphic design per se.
Yeah.
But I did a lot of kind of on the side because it's something that I really just always enjoyed it. I'm very much into kind of books, not even to read them just for the design of it. I just love
Right.
looking at books.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So it's something that I got into pretty quickly. Just finishing off this.
Yeah, I think my first editorial, it was a magazine. It was supposed to be inspired by a designer. I chose Melton Glaser. And so I got to be a little funky with my layouts. And on the first round, I felt pretty content with it, which was interesting because in other classes like typography, it was like, wait, I'm not getting this. It took many years of like finessing to just understand it. Well, I'm exaggerating with many years, but still, I think some things like layout design could be as complicated as typography for some. And I definitely felt like more comfortable with layout design. I think less is always more with it. I've noticed.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everyone has their own kind of one thing that I always found really, really, really difficult that I never liked is actually photo editing. Like I never got like, and everyone was really like excited about, especially like in uni, everyone was very excited about photo editing. I think there was a specific moment where filters were not a thing quite yet, so photo editing was very big.
Those terrible Instagram filters.
We all
went through that phase.
Remember them.
We all went through that phase. Somewhere down in my very first Instagram post is still there. Definitely had that. I was at my internship and I used that filter. I was like, this makes sense. You just gotta get used to. Yeah, but I could see that some people have a knack for some things more than others. Like folks who do code, I think you would be. I'm not surprised you have that web background because it's that sort of very organized, pay attention to the teeny tiny details sort of craft.
Yeah, that is so true. Which I think that with the editorial design can be tricky sometimes because I feel like you want to be a bit more experimental and have fun with it before you actually get into the nitty-gritty details. But it's just not me. I really struggle with that. So I feel like I always have to be very very precise with anything I'm designing.
Yeah. I mean, it also develops your portfolio and it's probably what helps your clients trust your style nonetheless.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's very interesting. I wonder if the client is actually watching this. I wonder like what they're actually thinking because it's so funny when you're actually designing the whole thing and you spend all of this time in like but knowing that someone might be watching it and judging it while you actually deciding, I'm like,
if the staff at Womankind are watching, definitely jump into the chat and let us know if there's any edits. Yeah. We have, Samantha says, I love Melton Glaser. I did one of my projects in college on him because his style is one of my favorites. It's so fun. Yeah. Yeah. It is really fun. And Arakia Raman says, have a question. Hope it's not silly. Okay. Do you have a minimum or max style in your paragraph styles? Minimum or max style in your paragraph style?
Number of styles that I would use. Not like I wouldn't try to kind of restrict myself in that sense. I do try to, like, when it starts getting too wide, I'm too long, I'm starting thinking maybe I've done something wrong. You know, so but yeah, I wouldn't say that I restrict myself with a specific number. No.
Oh, I also, there we go. I remember earlier I was telling you F. I totally confused shortcuts. But we have Joshua said Shift W. That's what we want for full frame.
There you go.
Do you see it? That's my favorite.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. It's also great for presentation because you can go down through your various pages.
Yeah.
And Shift W again.
Yeah, that's a very good one.
Yeah.
All right. I feel like looking at the time, this might be kind of like a last page.
Oh, you're good. Yeah.
I just want to kind of this could be our last page before we move on to kind of like kind of try and refine a couple of the pages. I don't want to spend too much time.
Yeah, sure thing.
Just kind of experimenting, which is very fun, but
yeah,
it's nice to jump on in different things. So, okay, our title is going to be our values. I'm just going to head ahead and steal this because I haven't actually copied it. Oh. So this page is actually going to be quite interesting because we've got this like 5 main points. So I'm wondering if we can play with the layout a little bit and place them in different places. So like our values is the title. I actually think I wrote it in all caps, which is wrong. There we go. Right, so I'm gonna try and play with it. There's gonna be a quote as well, which this quote seems to be very, very powerful. Looking at it from here. But
quote.
So let's have a look. So maybe for this one, I want to use my other kind of the highlight font. So maybe let's have a look what paragraph styles I created for it. So it was a quote, which is white. So I'm gonna have to change that. This is always what I find kind of like tricky with paragraph styles when I want to kind of explore
something else. Yeah. There's a point where you have to, where you go from like the stop experimenting stage and it's like paragraph styles are established. And so like going back into that, it's a little tricky.
Yeah, exactly. But let's see.
We're going to break the rules here.
We're going to break the rules. Yep. I am going to try and actually on this one, I think it could be quite nice to have a bit of like pop of colors. We don't have any images specifically. So let's see if we can do kind of that work through different elements, like maybe using, I've got a little arrow that I can pop in. So we're going to graphics. Oh, that's a big one. There we go.
And that's it. Feminism, minimalism.
That's all you need.
That's all you need.
There we go. We're gonna just change that. Maybe body highlights, so that's gonna be a bit big. Oh. Sometimes I find it like trickier to work on larger screen because I don't see exactly where my where the little square is to drag my text. So it's funny, but sometimes I find it easier to just work from my little laptop. Everyone makes fun of me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I don't know why, but sometimes it's easier for me to work off my laptop too. Depends on the task.
Absolutely. But I quite like also the fact that I can work from everywhere. For
Oh yeah.
example, the couch.
Yeah, coffee shops.
Oh. Yeah, I've been working from home for a long time now, so sometimes I
really?
wonder. Yeah, since the start of the pandemic, really, we've been just working from home. So sometimes it's great, and I love that. Also got a dog, so
Right.
it's nice to kind of like have that
Yeah.
to be with them all the time and not leave them alone. But yeah, sometimes can also feel a bit lonely. It's nice to go outside
Yeah.
and
To go to coffee shops in your
yeah,
laptop.
co-working spaces.
Yeah. Yeah, I personally thrive um in just having my studio tailored to me.
Mhm.
And in places where you work with other folks, everybody has the same chair. So
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because I felt like working from home was like the best possible thing that ever happened to me, and then like slowly but surely it just started becoming too much.
yeah, I
Um,
can see that. That's definitely where I think the live streams personally have helped me, just being able to tune in, chat with everyone, and catch up and have this sort of banter that has to do with design that, only comes from other collective minds that have that sort of ideas. I love that. It's one of my favorite things, being able to talk, about tech and things like that.
yeah, it adds so much just value really to your practice to be able to kind of share
Yeah.
this with other people, to listen to what other people do. It's very important. I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. I imagine you learn a lot from just having to deal with brands of this criteria, right? So
Mm.
you have to be almost like a tourist in their space for quite a while. I'm learning a lot just reading these things here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is what I find really like beautiful in a way about like kind of doing editorial design, is that there's a lot of reading that you have to do.
Yeah.
And it's not like just working on you know, not to minimize at all the work of like an illustration, for example, but where you've got
Mhm.
like kind of the creativity and to do that. But um yeah, I feel like with editorial design there's a lot of kind of like learning that you do
Yeah.
constantly, which I really really enjoy. um
Yeah, I think, yeah, I enjoy reading a lot too. I get lost in it. It's like very present. Penny says, sometimes the community feels like my only coworkers. Oh, that's awesome. We should have like a coworker social, online
yeah,
coworker social of sorts. Yeah, that's awesome. I hope you get to, really learn from everyone. And there's a really kind community here, so I really appreciate that. Reverb says coffee first, then oxygen. Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
priorities, right?
Samantha Mejia says, do you find it easier to break the text into the individual text boxes versus having it all together in one? I know what you mean. Definitely a tricky choice there. Like the header and body paragraph in one text box instead. What do you think? What's your preference there?
I like to divide each and every one of the elements because I like to
Mm,
have the flexibility to change that without kind of having to
yeah.
um yeah compromise because of that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think down the road you can also link them if you want to apply similar character styles. And if you don't want to link them still, like using that airdropper to drop in the character styles is also makes that a little bit faster. I think that's the only reason why I would have one whole paragraph is to, one click character style applies to everything sort of thing.
Yeah, true. Okay. There's a bit more work to be done here in terms of layout and kind of playing here, but
yeah, we have about 15 more minutes.
Yeah, sounds good. So I think I'm gonna just move back to, I say that I'm moving back, but I'm still playing with it, as you can see.
Yeah, time flies, definitely. But this is
So
cool, kind of. So you get to read all the headlines first,
yeah, I think
all
this
the
is what I
values.
want. There's more kind of work that needs to be done, because again, like I aligned it kind of logically, but I feel like from the perspective of the eye, it might be sometimes that you kind of have to do it manually to make it seem like it's aligned or kind of like
Yeah.
distributed correctly. So like this, it's not, but it feels more correct to the eye.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna leave it as that for the time being, and I'm just gonna go back to my one thing that I wanted to kind of do was create quickly kind of a cover now that we have all of these pages together.
Yeah.
And last but not least, really just kind of export. That's one of the things that I think I struggled the most with. Oh, no, that was right. The things that I struggled the most with when it comes to InDesign was like the infinite options that for export. So I found it quite good to kind of like go through that. Okay. So thinking here about my cover and how I'd like that to be very bold. So I'm wondering, I'm using this pattern that is created from kind of like the shapes of the logo. Gonna pop in also the logo itself. That's quite important for this page. Let's create this. So we want to use.
This is the cover, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think what I'm gonna use is this one in white. Let's have a look if it looks good. Okay, it's a nice one. We want to add a little bit of like a big text for our title. Let's just type it in. So that's our feminist future. And I won't go ahead and create any style for this one because it's going to be just specific to this page. So I think it would be a bit of a waste with this one specifically. Oh, there you go. -80 coming in again. So I think this can be even bigger. I quite like this pattern. It's just we need to be careful about kind of like in the interaction with the text, if it's going to be too it's going to be tricky to read.
Yeah, especially with the white against the purple, but it's a great size, so I think it looks pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's pretty readable. We're going to remove the guides in a second and see how that looks like. Actually, let's use the other highlight font for this. Yeah, I think the people that worked on the branding of this did a very good job. I very much like this kind of like the interaction of these colors, especially the secondary colors with the highlights.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and I think that the final touch can really be just adding one of these photos in there. Oh. There we go. Maybe this needs that spacing. Yeah, these are kind of my favorite parts when you get to play with all of these little details.
Meticulous.
Yep. Yeah. What do we think?
Yeah, I like the over text. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, I think it works pretty well. I don't know if it was something that I will use in the other pages, but oh, I actually need to lock this one. And yeah. So that's our cover for the time being until the client see it.
Yeah. Yeah, so at this point you would be able to share it with your client before it moves on, right? Just to be able to agree on everything.
So, yeah, I would export it, and from here just kind of like I always export into digital or print, so I would just kind of have my text at the end, right folder, and then kind of make sure that I've got all of my marks for print. Again, I will need to speak with the printer to understand what kind of marks they need, but yeah.
Yeah. So it's different sort of for presenting to client versus all the specs that you need for the printer.
Exactly. So for the printer, this is what kind of I would export, and it would look like with all of the different crop marks and the kind of color checks. But so that's a way of doing it. And then for the client, I would just export as, again, kind of digital, or maybe I would call it draft at this stage, but let's pretend for a second that it's all done. Then in here, I would kind of export it without any printer's mark and without the document bleed. So if we go and have a look at the difference of the two. So this doesn't have any kind of bleed around, and the other one has all of the crop marks that we need for printing. But again, important to check with the printer about how to what's the best kind of format, what they need.
And does the printer usually like do they have any sort of trouble if it's not in spreads or uneven numbers, or is there a workaround around that?
Yeah, again, it really depends on what is the type of work that you're printing. So if you're printing kind of a magazine and or a brochure, and you're thinking of kind of like folding it and binding it that way, you want to make sure that you have a multiple of 4 for the pages. And then again, some printers want you to send just kind of like as single pages. So you might design it as a spread, but then when you export it, you need to make sure that there are kind of single pages. Some printers are okay with the spread. So it really depends on kind of like, because then they break it down with the software that they have, that you reorganize the pages depending on how it's going to get folded. Yeah, so it really depends at the end of kind of like what is the final format.
So there's some flexibility there at the end. Cool.
I think you need to be at the beginning.
Oh, okay. We still
Rather
have
than at the
about
end.
5 minutes. Do you
Yeah.
want to share with us some of other examples of all your other editorial um, pieces that maybe we can share with those audiences that just joined us midway?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go and have a look at our website again. Well, for the people that just joined, this was the magazine that I created a few years ago. So we did 2 issues of it. The first one more focused on the different kind of the stigmatizing pleasure, more specifically more for women, and the second one was more focused on gender, so kind of the various relationship between femininity, masculinity, and gender identity. Which is something that is very important for me as I identify as non-binary. So it was kind of the beginning of my exploration as well, personally.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I like
so
that table of contents.
oh, that is possibly one of the things that I hate the most designing,
Yeah.
because
It's hard to organize it.
yeah, and thinking about especially like all of the illustrations or kind of artwork that you want to feature in that specific page might have a different size, a different format. So unless you just follow the classic book layout content, it's really tricky to design. I spend
Yeah.
the majority of time on this rather than the other pages.
Yeah, but I
um
can definitely see the designs that we created today sort of in there, but with a different branding.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would really say that I have a very specific style at the end of the day.
Style.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I'm quite minimalist in a way, and I like really clean design, really yeah, I'm very much into kind of like details and making sure that everything is like, I have a very annoying eye. So if something is not aligned, I can catch it immediately. So yeah, I end up spending a lot of time on the designs.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I do the same thing. That's one of my favorite things about getting into the flow. You get lost a little bit into the little details, but it ends up looking so clean, even if it's like a very robust, challenging like layout where everything's meant to look chaotic, but you just still create some organization around like the typography hierarchy or the distance between things,
Yeah.
and it still looks good. Yeah, and clean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so this is another work that we've done a couple of years ago, and it's for a charity based in London that helps supports young LGBT persons. So I've been volunteering for them for a very long time, because it's the classic, I wish I had that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've done some work with them aside from like kind of the website and all of that. We've done some print work, so kind of brochures. And make this a bit bigger as well.
Oh, that's the brochures you were mentioning.
So kind of like posters again, and like kind of the different assets. We create business cards for them. Yeah, so this is kind of another example.
I noticed you use a lot of illustrations. Is that something that you find to sort of help neutralize the message? Or is it kind of brand by brand basis?
It's really brand by brand. So in some places it's I actually did not love to work with illustrations, because it's, from a client perspective, they're really high maintenance. So unless they've got a big budget and you can kind of constantly produce new illustrations for them, it's really
I didn't think about that.
often,
That's true.
it often ends up like them being like reusing all of the assets all over again, which can be a bit like boring. So I tend not to work with illustration if I can, but their specific project of Agenomics was collaborations with multiple like creatives. So we wanted to make sure that that we had kind of all forms of content. So
Yeah, are
including
photos more
illustration.
manageable?
I think you can teach somewhat clients to be a bit more to find style like or photos that are in the styles of like in the branding, right? So if you create a branding guideline that includes also some like kind of guidelines on how to use photography, what to look for, they can find, even if they have a very low budget, they can even find some kind of royalty-free images. So it's easier than producing a full-on illustration.
Still on brand, can still be closely related. Okay. And this one, chemistry, all chemistry?
So, yeah, Alchemistry is a luxury jewelry brand based in London, and I worked with them a few years ago to produce kind of like, as you saw as I was scrolling, there's a lot from website, digital content to all of the leaflets that they kind of needed for the work. So there's really kind of a few different this doesn't have illustrations mostly. I mean, maybe this you can call it an illustration.
Yeah, the text is, the illustration, I see it there.
Yeah. So, I tend not to work much with it because, again, quite high maintenance, especially because we work a lot with not-for-profits that don't necessarily have that budget and that kind of the time even to commission someone, create a brief for a new illustration. So often it's more sustainable to kind of work with, with photography.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Cecilia, it's been awesome to just learn more about your workflow. Can you let us know where we can find you on the interwebs?
Of course. So as I mentioned, my website is at lutalica.studio, and our social handles are Studio Lutalica. So all of the work that you can find is there. So yeah.
Awesome. So everyone, thank you for joining us today. Stick around for the Illustrator Creative Challenge with Andrew Hoshrodel. Immediately following that challenge, stick around for a new episode of How To with Clady with Print My Soul and learn how to create seamless patterns in Illustrator, followed by a new episode of Let InDesign with Annika Agarwal. And till next time, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.